Tuning in. I'm TC. This is my channel, MBRR Podcast, Minnesota Black Robe Regiment Podcast. You'll have to forgive the sunglasses for a couple of minutes. I'm driving in traffic, and the sun is very bright, and I need to be able to see. And I mean, I'm not driving in traffic. I'm sitting quietly in my vehicle, not going anywhere. That's what I meant. Yeah, that's exactly what I meant. Brick Jonesy is here. Jugalassus is here. Good to see you guys. You're going to enjoy this topic tonight. If any of you tuned in to AVA's Spotlight with the Vigilance Committee the other day, he has an update that I think we're going to have him on Veteran Nation to talk about that tonight. I will try and stream that to the channel at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. We're going to try and have him on. We'll talk about his update there. And then some of you, I know, tuned into my 20-minute segment with Josh on Disaffected on Sunday night. If you haven't seen that, just go to Disaffected Pod on YouTube, and you'll see his most recent show. And I was on there talking about the nature of corruption in law enforcement. Stand by just a second. Your phone is being weird. I just sent you a text as I sit here in not moving vehicle, not driving. So, yeah. But yeah, since you're in and you're tuning in, please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet, share the video. Share the stream, share the video, come back afterwards, comment, even though you're commenting here, comment on it. And yeah, make sure you are hitting that like button. Love the haircut, yeah, well, I did that to go on Josh's show the other night. But yeah, one of these days I'm gonna do a video talking about the top 10 most important channels on YouTube. And you guys will see how it breaks down. You already know how I feel about the Angry Vet. Shout out to Angry Vet for being a show producer, being one of the top tier channel members. Shout out to IMAV from over on Subscribestar for being a top tier Subscribestar member over there. And then shout out to the Vigilance Committee, who are quickly becoming, if not the most important channel on YouTube right now. They will be in a very short period of time. Do not think that the number of subscriptions that somebody has lessens their ability to be important and impactful. So, which podcast are you talking about? Mine tonight, or right now, or Josh's from Sunday? My channel, my show is almost exclusively about holding government employees and elected servants and appointed servants accountable for their actions. And we start that by talking about who the elected servants and appointed servants rely on to enforce tyrannical policy, and that's almost always done through law enforcement. And so we spend a lot of time talking about law enforcement. So yeah, it's an important conversation. But yeah, check out the Vigilance Committee, especially check out their show with AVA on Sunday. It was an excellent show. And once again, if you haven't liked the channel, do so, or subscribe to the channel, do so. Like the stream, and if you're interested in keeping me going, like the work that I do, think about joining as a channel member. Would love to have you. I appreciate every single one of my channel members. You are all vitally important to me, and all the subscribers are as well. So last week I did a video talking about well, I mentioned in the video, I talked about Contempt of Cop, and I really I feel like it needed its own content, and everybody seems to think that they have a really good idea of where it stems from, where it flows from. And Contempt of Cop isn't I don't know, how do I want to say this? Contempt of Cop is not as easy to pin down as far as its source as everybody thinks. It is a very okay, what's going on here, people? All of a sudden people are trying to get into a turning lane that they're just forcing their way into a turn lane. I guess that we can do that now. I don't know. I mean, we can do whatever we want, I suppose. But yeah, anywho, so I was talking about Contempt of Cop and where it comes from, and like almost every time that Contempt of Cop comes up, everybody's quick go-to is the easy answer of what is the root of Contempt of Cop, and we all know what it looks like, and we see it almost always in semi-consensual, and I say semi-consensual interactions because I don't really think there is any such thing as a consensual interaction with law enforcement. You just cannot have, in this day and age, you cannot have a completely consensual interaction with a cop, because cops use Terry v. Ohio as an excuse to question you and hold you, and they really expect that you are going to do whatever they say, whether they tell you you're being detained or not. And so there is some level of consensual interaction with a cop to some degree, but for the most part, it just does not exist to be a completely consensual interaction. And you know, so like Saturday, I did a little walk and talk around the city of Austin and had an interaction with law enforcement, knowing full well that there was an opportunity where they could get out of the, you know, like one of them was already out of their squad and the other one could have got out of the squad, and they could have said, so why are you filming our cars? And at that point, that ceases being consensual. When they start asking you questions, it stops being consensual. But Contempt of Cop really comes in what a lot of people would call consensual encounters, or during traffic stops. Very rarely do you see Contempt of Cop come into play over in actual criminal situations. In actual criminal situations, most of the time the cop has already made up his mind that you're going to be arrested and hauled off, and so your attitude in that moment, whether you have the best attitude in the world or the worst attitude in the world, isn't going to change anything. And we see that a lot in traffic stops where a cop comes up and says, so where are you going? You know, where are you headed today? Well, I don't answer questions. Well, why are you giving me a hard time? I'm not giving you a hard time. I just don't answer questions. And, well, you know, I'm just trying to be friendly. Well, I don't answer questions. Where are you coming from? I don't answer questions. You know, and it's like, well, why are you being rude? And so we see it works in that moment to aggravate the cop. And a lot of people want that aggravation stems from cops all being psychopaths. That Contempt of Cop flows from psychopathy. That every single person that goes into the field is a psychopath. And that you have to be a psychopath to want to go into that field. And I'm not going to necessarily say that it's untrue on some levels. Psychopathy is part of the cluster B personality disorders spectrum. And there are certain personalities that are drawn to certain types of work. And people with psychopathy are drawn to a lot of what we would deem high stress, high conflict type of career fields. So you'll see psychopathy manifest itself in brokers, like floor traders on the stock market. You will see psychopathy manifest itself in finance, banking. You will see psychopathy manifest itself in doctors. There's a lot of surgeons, especially, who are on the psychopathy spectrum, if you would use that terminology. And so it's easy to some degree to say, well, it's because cops are all psychopaths. But not everybody that goes into the field is a psychopath. There are some people who genuinely go into law enforcement because they think that they can help. And some of that comes from, speaking of psychopathy, a lot of that comes from, my former employer, one of his squads right here in front of me. Well, now everybody's going to play Don't Race the Cop. Even though it's 65 in here. Yep, everybody's going to play that way. I'm wondering, should I flip the camera around and see if you guys can see? There we go. Now you guys can listen to me while we talk. Let's see if we can see psychopathy play out. So there are people who genuinely go into law enforcement to become an asset to their community. Now, it is very easy to blanket label them all psychopaths. That's an easy go-to, quite frankly. And it's actually too much of a pass, to be frank with you. And the reason I say that is because I would say about 25 to 35% of the people that you see exhibiting contempt of cop outbursts actually are probably psychopaths. They probably were, bullies in school, and they're using that continued power to continue to bully others. You guys might get to see a live bust here. I don't know. All right, nothing happened. I don't know. The stream buffered for some reason. I don't know why. Probably some sort of a technical interference. We lost technical interference. We lost her. She's been, she did. Somebody getting busted behind me now. Yes, always record police. Absolutely. But I'd say 25 to 35% of people who end up displaying that anger when you don't give them due respect are probably the respect that they demand, right? But the remaining percentage of cops with anger issues, when it comes to you not showing them the respect that they want, it's into them, believe it or not. And here's what I mean. You could have the person with the best intentions going into law enforcement because they've all been indoctrinated through the government-run indoctrination centers that we call public schools, they've all had their minds just inundated with this mentality that public servants are the end-all and be-all of everything that matters, and that to be a public servant is to be the best of humanity. And so they really do go into it with the mindset that they're going to help somebody. But the first thing that they do when they're training these people, whether it be through a police academy, a state patrol troopers academy, whether it's through a skills training, like Minnesota predominantly uses what's called a criminal justice degree, and part of that is skills training. They teach you that your mere presence is the first level of the use of force, and that you have to command respect and subservience from everybody on scene. I'm not making this up. This is 100% factually true. When I was hired by the Olmsted County Sheriff's Office, I was put into, and there again I worked on the detention end, but I was put into a academy for detention staff. And the use of force training was, we were riveted with the mindset of you must have presence. You absolutely must be at all times in command and in control. And it makes sense when you're thinking about it from being in their shoes. Oftentimes you're the only person on scene, whether you're a deputy in a housing unit or you're a deputy or a cop on the street interacting with a car full of people. You do have for lack of better terminology, you have to have a presence that says, I am in charge. And therefore, since I'm in charge, you're going to do what I tell you to do, and you're not going to be disrespectful. And that's actually very common to hear. You do not let people disrespect you. So you have this person who maybe has this very genuine desire to be helpful to his community, and his or her community. Let's remember, female cops have a problem with this too. In fact, more often than not, female cops are the worst when it comes to contempt of cop. What you end up dealing with are people who believe that in helping the community, because they're catching the bad guys, if they're interacting with you, you are a bad guy, and therefore you owe them subservience and respect. Now, you're like, well, but what if you're not one of the bad guys? What people don't understand is everybody they interact with is a bad guy. They're a criminal. That's the automatic assumption out of the gate, whether they're people in a detention center or they're people on the street. If they're coming to your house for a welfare check, you are a bad guy. And my form of helping you is controlling you. And if you do not bend to my demands, to my commands, even if I'm being out of line, I'm losing control of the scene, and therefore it's dangerous for me. So you showing me any kind of contempt is weakening my ability to have control. That is trained into them from the start, from the very get-go. You must be in control. And I'll give you some prime examples. And this was a hang-up for me. And when I mean it was a hang-up for me, I did a lot of damage to my own psyche because of how much it was drilled into us that you will not tolerate disrespect from the detainees that you're supervising. No one ever gave me a definition of what disrespect was. Seriously, there was never a definition. It was just, and it was in the detainee handbook. Like, we had a handbook with rules and expectations for them. And one of the rules was you will not be disrespectful to staff. There was no explanation of what disrespect looked like. So for each staff member, ultimately, and say it with me, it came down to personal opinion or your mood. And so I had a really good FTO, but she drummed into me. If somebody was being disrespectful and she observed it, she would make me go address that. That person was incredibly disrespectful to you. You asked them to do something, and they rolled their eyes and made a comment, and I'm like, well, yeah, but they did it. Yes, but they were disrespectful while they did it. Well, like, yeah, but I got what? Nope, they were disrespectful. And that's how they're trained on the streets as well. You cannot allow disrespect. And so over time, when you hear this day in and day out, when this is beat into your head that you cannot allow or tolerate disrespect, because the first sign of disrespect that you tolerate is an example of you losing control of the scene. And if you lose control of the scene, your safety and well-being is on the line. Then when you take into consideration as well that in each shift they have a shift briefing for the most part, but like before we started a shift, we had a shift briefing, and I've talked to you guys about this before. And in that shift briefing, we would hear about the threats for the day. We would hear about, you know, who had bad court news. We heard about who had a bad phone call, who had come close to getting into a fight with somebody else. And it's on the streets. Hey, this area was a hot spot today. This went on here. This went on there. Make sure that you are, you know, staying on alert in these areas. And by all means, make sure at the end of your shift, you are the one going home tonight. Be safe out there. Be safe in your housing units. So what you have is you have this duality of do not lose control, because if you lose control, you won't be safe. And if you're not safe, then you're not going to go home. And if you don't go home, this impacts everyone. And the way that you start the process of keeping yourself safe and keeping your fellow deputies safe is, or your fellow cops or whatever safe, is you maintain control of the scene by containing disrespect. I'm not making this up. This is exactly how they operate. This is precisely how they think. This is 100% on the nuts, exactly how they think. So even if you're the most gentle, kind person in a uniform, you are still approaching every situation with a jaded mindset of, I could do this job as long as they maintain their respect, as long as they're maintaining, you know, their proper position. They're reminded that they are plebs in this structure who answer to me. As long as they do that, we can have a cordial conversation. We can be fine. But the minute they're disrespectful, I have to put down my boot and crush the life out of them, because if I don't, the show's over. I'm not going to go home. That's exactly how they think. Now, I felt that early on as an FTO. I felt that eating into my soul. I felt that breaking apart my being, because I had been treated poorly by people my whole life. I had been the constant target of maladaptive behavior, in the sense of other people not knowing how to behave. I always ended up being the target. And so I knew what it was like to be treated like dirt. And so the cognitive dissonance is building inside of me throughout the beginning of my career and into becoming an FTO, when I started to realize that I could maintain control of a housing unit, and I could maintain the respect of the detainees by treating them like human beings. And by even pointing out, like, man, that was kind of disrespectful. Why would you talk to me that way? I haven't done anything to you. And so we even had this prescribed announcement that we were supposed to give in the housing units before we allowed the detainees out. And it would then, do not be disrespectful, there'll be no cursing, and on and on and on and on. And I would get to the point, like early on, where I would say, you know, like, I don't curse at you, you don't curse at me, and if I hear any cursing, we're going to address it. And the more I began to think about it, the more I began to think, like, what? And this is not to put anybody down as a human being. This is to help you guys realize people talk with cursing. It's people. That's how they talk to one another. They just curse. And I'm sorry, it is prevalent in the criminal community. So much so that in the phone call that I had with Chase on Sunday, and I'll be putting that call out as well, hopefully tonight. Well, tonight for channel members, hopefully, and then tomorrow sometime it'll go live for non-channel members. Criminals, you know, Chase has even said he's working on cleaning up his language because he's talked that way for so long, and it's just part of who he is. And I'm thinking to myself, why would I discipline somebody for using their language? And I did begin to, in the back of my mind, say, I wouldn't use natural rights as much then as I do now. I would say in the back of my mind, they have a freedom of expression. They didn't abandon that when they walked into this place. You don't abandon your freedom of expression. Now, there is, you know, there was a situation where one guy during the St. George Floyd riots was trying to provoke a riot inside of the facility, kept talking about burn this place down. That's, I'm not going to let go. I don't care who you are. You don't want people burning property down. A bad scene. And it would have gotten worse if addressed it. But when it came to generally, just in conversation with me, words, I wouldn't say you can't do that. And I would get chewed out. And ironically, I was the Christian in most of these situations. And, you know, I had a captain who was not a Christian by any stretch of the imagination. She always appeared to me to have a hard left bent in her political philosophy. And she would come and say, I hear these guys, you know, cursing in your housing unit all the time. Why aren't you addressing it? And I said, because, ma'am, I don't believe I have the authority or the means to strip them of their right to freedom of expression. And I would get chewed out. Well, how can you maintain control of this housing unit if you can't enforce the rules? I'm like, ma'am, I can enforce all the rules, but that one, we don't have authority to stop them from cursing. Now, if they come up and curse at me because they're mad about something, I'm going to say to them, hey, I think maybe we shouldn't talk right now until you can find a place where you can address me with civility. And that's how I would talk to them. And with my trainees early on, I would say to them, and this goes for people on the street, and this goes for people in the detention center. Every interaction that you have with a cop, every interaction that you have with law enforcement is your worst moment of your life in that moment. Now, for some people, there are varying degrees of their worst moments. But when you're having an interaction with law enforcement, when you're having interaction with a detention deputy in a detention center or a correctional officer in a state prison or wherever, in that moment, that what they're dealing with is the worst thing for them. It is the worst moment of their life. And worse, you know, especially if they're locked up in a detention center, you might be talking about people who just got the news that so-and-so and their family just died of cancer. And now you're not going to be able to go to the funeral. And you're going to expect that person is wondering, I could borrow a moment of your time to discuss the situation that is currently playing out in my abode outside of the confines of this facility. No, that's not how they're going to talk to you. You're a man, mother, locked up in here, and my fucking dad died of fucking cancer. I was supposed to be there with him. Now what's going to fuck you going to do to help me out? That's how they're going to talk to you. And your response in that moment is going to be what? You will not disrespect me. You will address me with the proper respect. And if you cannot do that, you can spend the rest of your day in your cell. Do you understand me? because that is exactly how people respond. And I would look at my trainees and I would say, so no matter how bad your life is right now, you are at work. And that person coming to you with something that is seemingly small to you can be earth-shattering, devastating to them. And they have no control. They have no power in that situation. You hold all the cards, and the only way they have of vocalizing what's happening in their life in that moment, because it's the worst moment of their life, is to be angry, and you are going to be the target of that anger. And your job in that moment is to understand that they are a human being, and what they need from you the most in that moment is understanding. And that is harder to train in anybody than anything else. I can teach you how to shoot. I can teach how to use a taser. I can teach you how to use pepper spray. I can teach you how to use strikes. I can teach you how to use pressure point control tactics. I can teach all of those things to you, and you can nail those things. I can teach you how to strategically and tactically handcuff somebody who's uncooperative. I can teach all of that to you, but it takes a lifetime of effort and a lifetime of work to look at those people and see them in the moment for their humanity and not lose your cool. But everybody around you is going to expect you to be the command authority in that moment. They're going to expect you to be the person to take charge. And that is why almost every cop you run into has developed some level of contempt of cop response. Either they had it from day one because they're psychopaths, or it's been their humanity has been beat out of them, either through the training of you must command this scene, you must have the respect of the people that you're dealing with, because if you don't have respect, you've lost control, and you've lost control, you're not safe. If you're not safe, you're going to die. This person's going to kill you and unalive you, and you're going to go home at the end. You're not going home at the end of the day, and your family's going to be without their loved ones. And they hear that every shift, all shift long, day in, day out, week after week, month after month, year after year, for decades. And at some point, even the ones who manage to hold on to their humanity and manage to hold on to some semblance of empathy and a sympathetic nature will eventually get to a point where they're so jaded because they're getting it from both sides. You're the guy on the call that's the social worker. And I did that on purpose because that's how they look at you. Social worker. Hey, go get Jones. Why do you want me to get Jones? We need the social worker, and you know how Jones is. He doesn't ever want to go hands-on with anybody. He wants to de-escalate. So go get Jones so he can talk to them the way that they want to talk. They make it sound effeminate. If you have a heart and compassion, they make you sound that way. That's how they see you. That's how they perceive you. You're the weakling. You're spineless. You're gay. You're Fruit Loop. You're worthless. And so you're getting it from both ends. You're getting it from the people that you're supposed to be working with because they see you as a softie and that makes you dangerous, or you're getting it from the people over here, and so sooner or later you just develop the shell. You just get a shell. You're just going through the motions. And that's where the attitude of contempt of cop comes from for law enforcement. A very small minority of the people that go into the career field actually are psychopath, could be diagnosed with psychopathy. A very small minority. But they develop it to some degree or another as they're on the job the longer they're there. And I used to laugh about it. When I mean laugh about it, I laugh about how jaded we would get. If you're a military veteran and you served any amount of time at all, you know about the jaded sense of humor. You know the gallows humor. I mean, we used to joke about calling people, and when I was with the 82nd, when we were doing jumps, we'd talk about people being lawn darts, Oh, we're going to have any lawn darts today? I mean, just think about that. You're jumping out of an airplane with nothing between you and the ground but a few thousand feet, or 1,000 feet, and in some really thin silk and some parachute cord. And your whole response to that is to joke about lawn darts. In other words, somebody's chute not opening and then burning in and being unalived in a tragic accident. And so I had somebody unalive themselves. Now, I wasn't working the unit, but on my shift we had somebody unalive themselves, and my sergeant tapped me to do security on the body until the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension could be brought in. To investigate the death. And I remember joking about it that night while the images of her body stayed in my head. Watching her go through the stages of death after she was declared. And being there and observing the BCA crime scene investigators do their thing, and just, having to step over or around her body to do well-being checks on all the females that had been in the unit and observed what was taking place with this person that they knew did the thing that they did. And I felt the bricks of the jadedness building in myself, and I said, I don't want to be this kind of human being. And in this situation, this poor lady was sitting in jail for a non-criminal offense, child support, and she was way behind, and she had 10 kids, and the judge, the child support court, said, oh, here's what I'll do. $1,000 bond. No, it was $100. $100 bond. No, I'll take that. It was $1,000 bond. She would need to come up with $100 to get out. She had 10 kids. And she couldn't come up with $100 between 10 kids to get her out on child support. And so at about 12:40 in the afternoon, she made a rope. And I said, as I listened to people joking about 10 kids, you couldn't come up with $100. And I felt myself identifying with them in that moment. And then I said to myself, I can't be that person. I never want to be that person. Because that person didn't have anybody like me in their life to give a damn about them, regardless of whether or not she brought it on herself. And that's where the contempt of cop attitude comes from. You just stop caring about people. And I'll go to hell if I stop caring about people. Because people deserve to be cared about. Even if no one else in their lives will. And I mean that. Don't give bad cops a pass by saying they're psychopaths. Because to some degree, if it's true psychopath, if it's truly a cluster B personality disorder, then they should be getting help. Because there is therapy for people with cluster B personality disorders. They're human beings too. Cops who are assholes and treat people like dirt because you don't show them the level of respect that they have, that comes from someplace else for the most part. That comes from them being trained to be soldiers and warriors and to see everybody as an enemy and a potential threat. And that has to be trained out of them. But that's never going to get trained out of them until we stand up and say changes need to happen. And unfortunately, the people that do really start to recognize that and do try to make a difference, they get rid of them. They don't last very long. So, real quick before we go any further, just get a good shot up my nose. There we go. Let's go say hi to the girls because you guys haven't seen them. You haven't seen them since Saturday and Sunday. Oh, girls. Did everybody make it through the day okay? Yeah. Oh, there's the other two. There's the other two floofy boots. Come on. Come on, chooks. All right. Yep, the Freedom Flock. So, I hope you guys have a good night. I'm going to try and stream Veteran Nation when we go live tonight, 8 o'clock Central. AVA should be on there. And maybe he'll give us a little update. He can't go into too much detail, but maybe he can give us a little update about what's going on in his life with the VA. And see you guys around 8. Hope you have a good night. Until next time, Sic Semper Tyrannis.